Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Thursday, March 26th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by Aria and JamgaMind. If you need high-fidelity intelligence built for the C-suite, JamgaMind delivers human-verified strategic audio forensics across healthcare, energy, and finance. Check out jamgamind.com for technical-grade analysis. And a quick reminder for our listeners, you can now enjoy all episodes of AI Unraveled completely ads-free by subscribing directly on Apple Podcasts. Today, the hype machine broke down. Francois Chollet has released the ARC-AGI-3 Reasoning benchmark, and the top models from OpenAI and Google are failing spectacularly, scoring under 1% on puzzles humans solve perfectly. We're going to discuss why next token prediction isn't true reasoning. But a lack of AGI isn't stopping the execution layer. The enterprise is realizing that large models are too expensive, turning to Google's new TurboQuant memory compression and small language models to handle their daily workloads. Meanwhile, Meta is on a billion-dollar shopping spree buying up autonomous agent startups. Reddit is deploying ID scanners to fight the dead internet theory, and the Pentagon is officially elevating Palantir's AI to the core of U.S. military infrastructure. Let's get into the news.
So this morning, an artificial intelligence model that cost roughly $100 million to train was given a logic puzzle.
Right.
A puzzle that a human child can solve in under 3 minutes. And, I mean, you can probably guess where this is going.
Let me guess. It struggled.
Oh, it didn't just struggle. The multi-billion-dollar AI scored exactly 0%.
Wow. A flat zero.
A flat zero! Welcome to the deep dive! We are doing a forensic autopsy today because the Silicon Valley hype cycle has just collided at terminal velocity with the brick wall of raw inference economics.
Yeah, the wreckage is pretty spectacular if you know where to look.
Exactly. I mean, if you read the corporate press releases flooding out today, March 26, 2026, you'd think we're living in this pristine post-scarcity utopia powered by AGI.
Right, the whole AGI is already here, marketing fluff.
But when you strip that away and look at the bare metal, the actual architecture and enterprise data centers, it is a much more cynical reality.
It really is.
We're tracking a systemic shift today driven by the failure of scale. We've got a massive stack of sources on the table. We're looking at Francois Chollet's new ARC-AGI-3 benchmark, Google's latest memory compression research, Meta's quiet talent monopoly.
Which is massive, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Plus the Pentagon's staggering new AI budget and Reddit's desperate crackdown on non-human traffic. So let's unpack this.
Well, to understand the architectural panic sweeping the industry today, you really have to ignore the consumer product announcements. You have to follow the engineering constraints.
Right. The physical limits.
Exactly. We're witnessing this profound collision between the physical limits of current transformer architectures and the staggering financial cost of running them.
The inference costs.
Right, the inference economics. The entire industry is executing a highly coordinated pivot to hide a very uncomfortable truth.
Which is?
That simply throwing more compute at a trillion-parameter model is no longer making it functionally smarter.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an enterprise CIO looking at the benchmark data drop this morning, you are suddenly wondering why you just signed a multi-million-dollar contract for essentially a glorified autocomplete.
Yeah, very expensive autocomplete.
So let's start with the forensic report from the ARC Prize Foundation. They just released ARC-AGI-3. For anyone tracking the space, you know this is the premier interactive reasoning benchmark.
Right.
And the failure rate of the frontier models is just, it's clinical, it's complete.
We really need to define what this test actually measures, because it exposes the core vulnerability in modern AI design.
Walk us through it.
So the tasks in ARC-AGI-3 are novel, game-like scenarios. There are 0 instructions provided. The system is dropped into a visual environment and forced to deduce the underlying physical rules, formulate an objective, and execute a strategy entirely from scratch.
No prompts, no hand-holding.
Exactly. And human beings, even kids, can solve 100% of these tasks on their very first try. The AI models, however, well, they cannot.
I have the raw numbers here for the frontier models, and it's brutal. Google's Gemini Pro scored the highest, clocking in at 0.37%.
Wait, just to be clear for everyone.
Not 37%. 0.37%.
Well, less than 0.5%.
Yeah. GPT 5.4, high achieved 0.26%. Anthropic's Opus 4.6 sits at 0.25%, and Grok 4.20 scored a flat absolute 0%.
It's incredible.
They failed to break a single percentage point on a test designed to measure basic deductive reasoning. Why is it this bad?
Well, this brings us to the structural limitation we call the reasoning bottleneck. You have to look at the historical context here. When a previous version, ARC-AGI-2, came out, the initial scores were around 3%.
Right, and then they shot up, didn't they?
They did. Within 12 months, the major labs pumped their scores up to nearly 50%, but they achieved that by contaminating the training sets.
They cheated.
Basically. The labs scraped every permutation of the ARC-2 test and fed it into the pre-training data. It wasn't cognitive leap. It was an open book test where the models simply swallowed the answer key.
So, it's the difference between memorizing every single turn on a highly detailed city map versus being dropped in the middle of a dense forest with just a compass.
That's a great way to put it.
The frontier models are incredible at the city map because they've memorized the entire internet. The architecture is purely token prediction, guessing the next statistical word based on trillions of parameters.
Right.
But the second you drop them in the forest, which is what ARC-AGI-3 does by procedurally generating novel environments that do not exist in the training data, they fail catastrophically.
Because memorization scale is completely useless when you actually need navigation.
Exactly. And why should you, listening to this, care? Because this completely shatters the immediate AGI is here marketing narrative that these companies are selling you.
Yeah. The reasoning bottleneck proves that pattern matching against an immense data set does not magically spark deductive reasoning at a certain scale.
It just doesn't happen.
No. And because these frontier models are failing to navigate novel problems, enterprise decision makers are refusing to foot the bill for their exorbitant compute costs.
Which makes sense.
Totally. And that exact financial pressure is what forced Google's hand this morning with their new TurboQuant algorithm.
Right, because if the model can't reason its way out of a novel problem, it becomes mathematically absurd to pay premium token costs to run basic repetitive corporate tasks through it. It's a massive waste of money.
So the industry is pivoting aggressively toward inference economics. They're shrinking the operating costs. Let's unpack TurboQuant, because the mechanics of how Google achieved this are fascinating.
It really is. TurboQuant is basically a surgical strike on operating costs, specifically targeting the Q-value cache, or KV cache.
A memory bottleneck.
Exactly. When you interact with a large language model, the hardware has to retain the mathematical representation of every previous token in the conversation to maintain context.
Right, to remember what you just said. Yeah. And as the context window grows, that memory requirement balloons exponentially, which bottlenecks the GPU and destroys profit margins.
So how are they shrinking it without destroying the model's memory entirely?
So TurboQuant utilizes a nonlinear pruning metric. It analyzes the attention heads dynamically, identifying the specific mathematical weights that are merely processing syntactic structure rather than core semantic meaning.
Oh, wow.
And it simply discards them from active memory. By dropping that redundant data, they compress the memory footprint by over 6 times with 0 retraining required.
6 times smaller. That's huge.
It gets better. On NVIDIA H100 chips, the throughput spikes by 8x because the system is no longer bottlenecked by the hardware's memory bandwidth, and they are achieving this with almost 0 accuracy loss on complex retrieval tests.
And Wall Street understood the technical implications immediately. I mean, the stock of top AI memory providers dropped by 3 to 5% this morning.
They see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, the market is pricing in a reality where smarter compression algorithms destroy the premium demand for raw hardware memory. But this efficiency pivot goes much deeper than just compression, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is fundamentally changing model selection, which brings us to Rob May and Neurometric's new SLM Marketplace.
SLM being small language model.
Right. This transition from large language models to SLMs is driven by what we call the 25-75 split. Neurometric forensically analyzed typical enterprise AI workflows, and they found that only about 25% of tasks actually require frontier-level logic.
And the rest?
The remaining 75% are purely administrative. Basic data extraction, routing, classification, summarization.
So using a trillion-parameter frontier model to extract an invoice date from a customer service email is, it's like using an advanced quantum supercomputer to balance a checkbook.
Exactly. The latency and the compute overhead of firing up those logic gates are entirely asymmetrical to the task.
So Neurometric's Marketplace just launched with 115 task-specific models, all under 20 billion parameters. And Rob May stated that running 100 million tokens on one of their hosted SLMs cost them roughly 40 cents.
The cost drops to the floor. However, deploying a heavily lobotomized parameter count introduces a severe architectural vulnerability.
Wait, stop there. Because Rob May is pitching these 20 billion parameter models as the ultimate enterprise solution. But structurally, when you compress the parameter count that heavily, you destroy the model's ability to hold complex multi-step context.
You do.
So if these smaller models cannot self-correct, aren't enterprise companies just buying highly efficient hallucination engines?
They absolutely are, unless they utilize harness engineering.
Okay, harness engineering, explain that.
Right. So an SLM lacks the latent space to catch its own deviations. You cannot trust the model to think. Instead, you wrap the model in a programmatic framework composed of microharnesses.
Like guardrails.
Exactly. If the task is routing an invoice, the harness is a rigid state machine loop that forces the model to evaluate its own output against a strict regular expression pattern before passing it along.
So it's constantly checking itself against the harness.
Yeah, you're constantly injecting state check prompts at every node. Here's what you are doing. Here's the exact format required. Execute. You confine the model to an engineered track.
Got it. And because you can run thousands of cheap, highly efficient, harness-engineered SLMs for fractions of a cent, the inevitable next step is chaining them together to execute autonomous routines.
Now we're getting to the scary part.
Right. And that logic dictates Mark Zuckerberg's current trajectory at Meta. Look at this. He just projected $135 billion in capital expenditures for 2026.
Which is just a staggering number.
Yeah.
But Zuckerberg is not merely hoarding GPUs, he is executing a ruthless agentic acqui-hire strategy.
Yeah, let's look at the timeline. Over the last few months, Meta acquired Manus, an autonomous web agent, for $2 billion. They absorbed Moltbook, an AI social network. They recruited Alexander Wang from Scale AI as chief AI officer. And this morning, they acqui-hired the entire engineering team behind the agentic platform Dreamer.
And they folded them directly into Meta Superintelligence Labs to build an internal model codenamed Avocado.
Avocado. I mean, don't let the consumer branding fool you. Avocado is not an upgraded chatbot for Instagram.
No, not at all. Structurally, Meta is architecting a decentralized decision support layer.
A decision support layer.
Yeah, an agentic architecture utilizes a scratchpad system. It can spin up a headless browser, scrape a target, parse the document object model, and execute a script entirely without human intervention.
So they are building an orchestration layer that operates autonomously across their entire ecosystem.
Exactly. And Meta is not operating in a vacuum here. Brett Taylor's company, Sierra, just introduced Ghostwriter.
Oh, this one is wild.
It is. This is a system whose singular, dedicated function is to build other AI agents across 30 different languages for enterprise deployment.
Okay, let me push back on the sheer operational chaos of this. We are talking about a recursive deployment loop.
Yeah.
If we have agents spinning up other agents to handle enterprise routing, who is actually managing the perimeter?
With Meta pushing internal agents and Sierra launching Ghostwriter to have agents build other agents, the enterprise attack surface is spiraling. ARC-AI provides the necessary micro-VM sandboxing and zero-trust policy engine to ensure these autonomous systems don't become rogue liabilities.
Because sandboxing becomes the only viable defense mechanism, right?
Yeah.
The sheer velocity of agentic deployment entirely outpaces traditional security perimeters.
Exactly. You cannot rely on human oversight when an agent can execute 1,000 API calls in the time it takes an administrator to just open a dashboard.
It's moving too fast. But look, if we are terrified of corporate sandboxes breaking, the geopolitical attack surface represents an entirely different class of catastrophic risk.
Oh, without a doubt.
The technologies we just discussed, these autonomous agentic loops and harness-engineered decision layers, they are actively being integrated into systems making literal, lethal decisions. The U.S. Defense Department is spending $13.4 billion on AI this year alone.
And the keystone of that budget is the Pentagon officially formalizing Palantir's Maven AI.
Right.
They are expanding its investment umbrella from $480 million in 2024 to a staggering $13 billion today.
That's a massive jump.
It is a fundamental classification shift. Maven has moved from being a defense contractor experiment to being officially designated as core military infrastructure.
And civilian tech watchdogs are paralyzed by the structural implications of that exact phrase, core military infrastructure.
Because it operates by different rules.
Completely. When consumer software hallucinates, you shut down the server, right? Or you roll back the deployment. Infrastructure does not get shut down.
No, it doesn't.
When core military infrastructure exhibits erratic behavior, it gets patched live in the field, often while actively integrated into a kill chain.
Right, and the divide between the civilian and military sectors really comes down to optimization metrics. In the civilian sector, regulators and enterprise compliance boards demand explainable AI.
They want to know exactly how the AI thought.
Exactly. They require a forensic audit trail of exactly how the neural network arrived at its conclusion. But the military operates on an entirely different philosophy. They prioritize executable targeting and verifiable targeting.
So explainability just becomes a secondary metric to latency.
Precisely. If an autonomous system can fuse synthetic aperture radar data with drone telemetry to paint a target 400 milliseconds faster than a human analyst, the Pentagon will accept a fractional hallucination rate.
Because the tactical advantage outweighs the error margin.
Yeah, and for decision makers who need to understand the second-order effects of these geopolitical shifts, Jamgamind provides human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics in healthcare, energy, and finance. Visit djamguide.com.
And while the defense sector is systematically stripping out explainability to maximize targeting speed, the consumer web is currently drowning in the exhaust of these exact same agentic systems.
The bot fallout.
Exactly. We have to look at the structural collapse happening right now on platforms like Reddit. CEO Steve Huffman is being forced to implement a draconian bot crackdown simply to keep the servers online.
The dead internet theory is no longer just a dystopian thought experiment. It is the baseline operational reality for every platform architect today.
It's here.
Yeah. Huffman's crackdown really reveals the desperation of this situation. Reddit is instituting mandatory bracketed app labels for approved automated accounts.
Which is wild.
And more importantly, they're deploying passkeys and integrating Sam Altman's World ID scanner just to verify suspicious accounts.
They are actively trying to avoid implementing mass government ID checks because the privacy blowback would be catastrophic.
Oh, it would destroy them.
But they are cornered. We just watched rival platform Dig completely fold like a total structural collapse after its architecture was overrun by synthetic traffic.
And look at Cloudflare's latest data projections. They show that automated traffic will surpass human traffic entirely by 2027.
Next year. We are less than 12 months away from humans becoming the minority presence on the internet.
And notice the cynical pragmatism in Reddit's approach here. Huffman is not banning AI-generated content. He publicly labeled it annoying, sure, but stated that individual communities can police it themselves.
Because platform architects aren't trying to stop AI generation, that battle is mathematically lost.
It's over.
They are just desperately trying to build human verification lifeboats to prevent their core advertising metrics from degrading into useless bot-on-bot engagement loops.
Exactly.
It is a complete Band-Aid approach applied to a systemic hemorrhage, and you see the exact same panic mirroring this in the regulatory sector.
Oh, the EU is panicking.
The European Union Parliament just adopted their Omnibus proposal on the AI Act. But here's the catch. They are delaying the core high-risk AI system rules to 2027 or 2028, claiming they need to give companies breathing room.
Right.
Yet, in the exact same session, they slapped an immediate, strict ban on AI nudifier deepfakes.
Which perfectly encapsulates the geopolitical chaos right now. Regulators are completely overwhelmed by the architectural complexity of small language models and decentralized agentic networks.
They don't know what to do with them.
They do not know how to govern a localized, harness-engineered AI running on a consumer laptop. So they delay the hard governance.
And just ban the obvious stuff.
Right. They immediately ban the visceral, surface-level symptoms like deepfakes because visual manipulation is literally the only element of the technology the voting public intuitively grasps.
So when we stack all these architectural shifts together, what is the actual state of the board today?
Well, synthesizing the data we just forensically unpacked, the architecture of 2026 is defined by a deep structural contradiction.
Right.
We have an ecosystem where the most expensive, compute-heavy frontier models are fundamentally failing to truly reason, as we saw with the 0% scores on the ARC-AGI-3 benchmark.
The memorization scale is failing.
Exactly. Because the brute force scaling laws are collapsing, the enterprise sector is pivoting hard to inference economics. They're shrinking models via TurboQuant compression and SLM marketplaces just to achieve cheap, frictionless execution.
While letting them run wild.
Yeah. Simultaneously, titans like Meta and Sierra are wiring these cheap, highly constrained models together, empowering them to build each other and operate autonomously across the web.
It's all connecting.
And we are actively integrating these exact types of opaque, agentic systems into our core military infrastructure to accelerate executable targeting. All-while platform architects at Reddit desperately deploy biometric scanners just to verify who is still human on the consumer web.
We are accelerating a highly efficient machine running on rails we barely comprehend, let alone control, which leaves you with this final thought to mull over today. If the frontier models have undeniably hit a reasoning bottleneck, but we are simultaneously deploying billions of agentic microharnesses into our military kill chains and our social feeds, what happens when this decentralized decision support layer starts making highly efficient, consequential decisions that human engineers can no longer explain, audit, or reverse? Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to get this daily intelligence completely ads-free.
That concludes our rundown for March 26th. The signal for today is inference economics. The ARC benchmark proves we cannot just scale our way to AGI. We are going to need a fundamental breakthrough in how machines actually think. Until then, the winners won't be the labs with the biggest models, but the companies that figure out how to run small, specialized agents at the lowest possible cost. This episode was made possible by Iria and Jamgamind. For human-verified technical-grade forensics, visit jamgamind.com. And don't forget to hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to get your daily news completely ad-free. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.